Welcome to the Eye of Power podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dardick. But this podcast is not about me. It's about you and your power. It's time to claim yours. Today on the Eye of Power podcast, it's my great pleasure to welcome Esther Angell to the show. And we met because she was the moderator on a panel that I was on a couple weeks ago. And she did such a great job that I was like, I got to get her on. She really knows what she's doing. Has a great story, great personality, and she had kind of good insights when we're talking off stage. I was like, man, this is somebody who I think we can really have a great conversation with. And guess what? I wasn't wrong. And so our conversation today gets into Esther's story and how she got to be in the wonderful place she is now. And which is she's gone through corporate America, been a leader, been in a lot of different kinds of situations. And now she helps organizations sort of tell their story and reach their people. And you'll see, she's quite talented at what she does. And so without any further ado, let's welcome Esther Angell to the show. So Esther, you were talking about some advice from your mother.
Yes. So
yeah.
my mom gives the greatest advice. I'd love to tell stories about her. But she gave this advice: if you want a friend, you have to be a friend. And my parents would also tell me, because they had done a lot of counseling, they're both teachers, people love to talk about themselves. So a great way that I've coached my kids is to ask questions about someone else. And it has really helped my kids get a little more confidence, I feel like, in social settings. I watched my daughter, who was 12 at the time, chat up a college student, but just asking her questions about college. What do you like about college? What are you studying in college? What is it like to live at the dorms? What are your friends like? What activities do you do? When you start asking people about themselves, like, people love it. And then what did they walk away? She's so mature. I'm like, not really.
Exactly.
But
The person's thinking, wow, this is a little person here, not a little kid.
yeah, and kind of, yes, and it also, I think, is important to show genuine interest.
Sure.
So when I think about even some philosophies of my life is around curiosity, is really coming with, I'm curious, I'm not judgmental. And I think that authenticity of just listening and letting you be in the mode that you are in, it doesn't mean I don't challenge you, but I can do that with curiosity, as opposed to judging you like, well, you're wrong. Well, I might think you that, my first instinct might be to be, okay, that is a dumb idea. But I can ask the question, like, how do you handle this part of that experience? And they're like, well, maybe. I'm like, well, could there be a different way to do that? That, like, for example, and then tell stories. So that's the other element of it is storytelling. So my mom was really good about helping us think through how you make friends. She always had friends. She literally was told one time in college, a guy came up to her and says, I don't like you. She's like, what? Everybody likes me. He goes, you're too nice. She goes, so she also gave the advice of, at some point you have to realize you can't make everyone happy and you're not going to be friends with everyone. And that's really okay.
It's funny. I'm laughing because do you know the movie Uncle Buck?
Yes.
So for those that don't know the movie, it's John Candy and a young Macaulay Culkin is like 10 years old at the time, around the time of Home Alone and all that.
Yeah.
And he's his sort of ne'er-do-well uncle who has to take care of the kids in an emergency situation. The parents are mortified that they have to trust this guy with their kids with this guy. But so when he comes in, it's like this rapid fire question thing of the little. So that's what I'm picturing.
Oh, I loved it. That is a great scene. My other favorite scene was when he drilled through the door.
Oh, yeah.
My dad, who's a very huge personality, was like, that's right. That's how you do it. And I'm like, okay, Dad, just calm down. Calm down.
Little dental work. Oh, that's great. He left us too early, John.
Oh my God, entirely too soon.
Yeah. So let's go back to, so we're talking about your mom a little bit. Let's get kind of into your origin story. I just want to start with the fact that the reason I invited you on, I knew we were going to have a great conversation because I was super impressed when we were doing the panel together, how you were really able to be, number one, 100% present. Number two, able to kind of weave in and you really set the stage. And one of the remarkable things about our panel experience was it seemed like everybody was kind of building off what other people
Mm.
said. So it was
Right.
everyone was listening. Too often panelists get up there and they're just gonna talk about what they're gonna talk about,
Yep.
regardless of what else is going on contextually. And I think
Mhm.
you really kinda set the tone and were one of the generating reasons why we got to that synergistic conversation that everybody in the room really appreciated. So
Mhm.
so that told me you have a good amount of skill with, listening, like we were just talking about. Be
Yeah.
you want a friend, be a
Be a
friend,
friend.
and that's related to that. It's related to seeing people and that being present and
Mhm.
just really wanting to know, that curiosity you're talking about, wanting to know, and, people who when I'm in situations and people are like, "How do you know all these people already?" It's like, "Well, I was actually wanting to know them. That's the secret."
I
And so
was
I
just
just wanna
gonna say that. Yes.
oh, were you? Well, I wanna
Yeah,
take
no.
so the question behind all that is, Esther, is how did you get were you born this way? Did you get this way? Your journey, that sort of
Oh,
how you kinda
yeah.
got to the place you are now.
Yeah, that whole, nurture versus nature. So I think there is a whole lot that goes into both parts of it. I think my background is pretty unique. So grew up in rural Oklahoma.
Hmm,
My parents actually moved back to the house that I grew up in. We'll go and visit them about once a year in 6 acres. It was farmland everywhere. Now there's a bunch of rigs because they're
okay.
drilling in
It
that
wasn't
area.
Landman?
I have watched Landman, we think it's hilarious. It's very vulgar, we don't watch it when the kids are around, but, it's exaggerated, but there's a lot of truth in a lot of those elements. So I grew up in a rural place, but you would and some people will have a connotation of what that experience would be like. I've literally had people tell me, "Well, you don't sound like you're from Oklahoma."
Mm.
What is that supposed to sound? I don't know what I'm supposed to sound like. But my mom was not from Oklahoma. My mom was from Queens, New York. She grew up in Elmhurst. And my parents met on a blind date in the late '60s,
Oh, wow.
and they had this wild, crazy dating experience, like, they went I think the 2nd date was picking up a boat in Canada. I think the 3rd date was in Scotland because my dad was on submarines, and he was gonna be stationed there, and she happened to be
Must
there.
have impressed the heck out of your mom.
It was so funny, like, the stories that they've told on this, and then by the time you're a kid, like, they've settled down and they're not living the same way, and so it seems like a fairy tale. But I had these experiences, and my parents, while I grew up in the same place, they still own that property. We had these crazy adventure experiences. I went on. My parents were very religious. We raised in a Christian home, and they had friends who were missionaries. So there would be we had missionary friends from Africa. We had missionary friends from Denmark. We had missionary friends from the South America. So we would go. We went on the first mission trip I went on. My dad packed us up with a friend of his, and we went down to visit churches in Mexico, in the mountains of Mexico. At
Hmm.
7 years old, I was 7 years old. I was the oldest of four. So my experience in life is
I'm the
free.
oldest of 4 too.
Oh, really? Okay, well, say, "Hey, hey, eldest." My husband is the oldest of 4 too. Pros and cons, pros and cons. But so you have these experiences, and it just frames up a different worldview. So my worldview started at a very young age not being, one way. The world isn't just one way. There are lots of people coming from lots of backgrounds that look different, talk different. They're just different. And I think that it set up for me being okay with that and being genuinely curious about how people are showing up and then over time, so that's kind of like I think probably there's some anchored in curiosity there, but I think a lot of it is having those experiences and then genuinely wondering, like, how do people show up and why are they the way they are? I worked in a faith-based organization for a while, and it really taught me that so many times people are products of their environments. There's
Yeah,
so much that is a product of the environment, and the decisions that they make is a product of that environment. And it balances with who they are, like genetically, who you are. But I think that when it comes to curiosity, how did I get this way? I think it's a bit of both. And I mean, my parents are I could say, yes, my parents are smart, they're well educated, they know lots of people, they're really friendly, like, my dad, despite being this massive, huge, crazy personality, like A-type personality, is still like people like to meet him. He's such a nice, genuine person. He genuinely cares, genuinely wants to see people helped and successful. And then my mom as well was a professor for years. So I think that genetically there's probably that predisposition to that curiosity mindset. But a lot of it's just having those experiences and then being open. I think a lot of people I've noticed it seems, and I've mentored some people who are so internally focused. You're so focused on me and how my life is going, my experiences, that it closes you off from the world, and that's not
Well,
healthy.
and that's the place where a lot of our pathologies, our mental pathologies kind of are
Mhm.
born in that introspection place, right?
Yeah.
We don't know everything, so we look at these things and then anxieties take over and they
Mhm.
multiply and then it becomes this sort of self-perpetuating circle where we're focused on ourselves, then we wonder about other people and then
Yeah.
focus more on ourselves and we wonder more about other people and the rifts
Yeah.
kind of grow and problems emerge and we it doesn't lead in a good direction.
No, no, it doesn't lead in a good direction, and I think as you were kinda saying that, I think a lot of times we assume that everyone is thinking through it the way that I would think through it. They're thinking about me the way I think about me, and nobody thinks about you the way you think about you.
They don't think about you that much.
100%, and I try to tell this is a really, really hard thing for my kids because I think about me all the time. So it's really hard to kinda get out of that mindset and the neurosis that comes with it eventually when you're by yourself laying in bed, because we've all been there. We're laying in bed and our brains are trying to process, which I'm not crazy, but my brain is trying to process all the things that happened in that day and the mistakes that I made, and it's that I think is evolutionarily, right? So if you survived into the night, then you had to analyze what happened that day so that you could survive the next day. That's like thousands of years ingrained in us. It's not gonna go away because now I'm safe. I don't worry about a bear coming to eat me. So, I think we have the neuroses the way our bodies and our minds work, and then the question becomes, how do you talk yourself out of that? And so that, I think, is like a little bit of self-coaching that can be healthy for us to do, and I think for young people, if you haven't had that process, talking to someone who has gone through that process to help you through that process is good. So I am a firm believer in making the connection, especially like mentoring type of connections.
There's elements that are the word I use often is emergent, where,
Mhm.
once you've taken care of the basic necessities of life, food, shelter, family relationships, close circle type relationships. We're not done there. Once we feel like we've got those boxes checked and are going, we're usually not done. We keep moving outward, ultimately towards we want to feel significant. We want people to see us for the person we actually are, right? And the thing that tends to keep that from happening is
Mhm.
ourselves in a way. And one of the things I really admire about you, Esther, is you're very pronounced. You're letting it all hang out. You're not really inhibited, at least in the way that we've interacted so far. I feel like you're easy to know. You're easy to go in any direction. That kind of helps that feeling of being seen, right? You're helping people, and that leads towards a feeling of being fulfilled. So I'm saying all that because I wanna get into sort of your professional path a little bit and how it came to be that we came in the same
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, some of the stuff that you said was really interesting. I will say it is some of it's very purposeful for me and some of
Okay.
like, it happens. Something that's very purposeful for me is I had a relative I was very close to, my aunt, and she could be in the room with anyone. A kid, she did it for my kids, and she would do it for, like, famous astronauts. She, knew a lot of very influential people, and everyone felt special in her presence. And she passed away entirely too young of cancer, and after that moment, felt that there was something missing in the world from her
Oh, wow.
because she was such an exceptional human. I'm gonna get
Wow,
emotional.
wow. Oh, this is
Just
interesting.
such an exceptional human, taken too soon from us, and she made you feel special if you were with her. So, it's something that I wanted to take that mantle on as best I could in my way to make the people around me feel seen and heard and loved.
So that's quite an inspiration then.
It was very inspirational. Her name was Lynn. I call it Live Like Lynn.
Live like
Um, Live like Lynn. I want people to live like Lynn. I wanna live like Lynn. I wanna live, and she was, she grabbed the bull by the horn and kicked it a few times. No one loved a dirty joke as much as Auntie Lynn. She was a hoot and a half. Her sons literally had code words if she was going off the rails, like, to the point of, like, "You need to stop, mom." It was a muskrat, like,
Oh, I love
muskrat.
that. I use that reference a lot. For those that don't remember or don't know, that's Meet the Parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, she was this really interesting human, and I think there's points in my life where I've shifted and said, "It's not just about me or growing my career. What do I give back? How do I show up? How do I make other people feel special?" And my purpose as a human, why I wanna be on this earth, is to create positive influence in the sphere that surrounds me. So, I don't necessarily like, getting famous or like, there's lots of people that know lots of people. I may not ever be there, but what I can do is my neighbors, do I take care of them? Like, we have 80-year-old neighbors across the street. I'll bring them dinner sometimes. I'll make sure the other neighbor that with the little kids, can my daughter go over and watch her kids for a minute? Yes, I use my children for babysitting, but whatever. But I want those people to know that their presence in my life matters, and I want the world around me to feel better and to be better because I was there.
Yeah.
And I think if more of us took that kind of I don't need to change the world. I need to change my world. Because if we all were trying to change my world to be better, and sometimes you have to let people exist or hold them accountable for bad decisions. I mean, I've told people, like, just keep your mouth shut. If you would just start keeping your mouth shut. I know somebody who got let go because of something that they said, and I'm like, just keep and they reflect on it as well, like, "Oh, why can't I do this?" I'm like, "Well, we could talk about that, but yes, there's consequences for what you say. I love you, and I think you're wonderful, and let's keep on moving." So sometimes holding accountable, that doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable or don't have hard conversations, but I wanna make that world around me a better place.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the hard conversations are required if you have actual love for the person.
Mhm. Or frankly, even care.
Yeah.
Like, if you care about someone, you're willing to have hard conversations, and I think most women will appreciate this. You were telling her if she got toilet paper on her shoe. You were telling her, like in general, women have this camaraderie to do that, and I think they do it in a very different way than men do, which I've found fascinating in my career and my life, but we have to have that, take care of each other. There's no reason not to. Why wouldn't you take care of someone?
Well, that would start with, do the men notice that there's toilet paper on the person?
They won't, but they will hold each other accountable in different types of ways. So, women can also be really, really mean, especially middle school girls. Like, we
Oh
all know that
gosh,
story, Mean Girls.
that's the biggest locus of evil, I'd say. 13-year-old girl groups.
They can well, and I don't think, like, if you went and talk to little girls, they're not trying to
Oh,
destroy someone's life, but they're trying to survive.
it's it's not a character flaw, it's the way that we're built.
It's the way that we're built. But it's I guess interesting is that I have seen men have difficult conversations with one another to hold each other accountable on certain things. Like, "Dude, you can't say stuff like that." Where women wouldn't say those words in that way, like, they'll just have a different way, like, I think there's a book called, Same Words, Different Language, and she talks about the author talks about that, like, we're using the same words, but meaning different things. Like, the word maybe can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Maybe, I don't know, could be. Yeah, so I think that overarchingly, we should be looking for the ways that we can bring positive influence. Now, you did ask about my professional experience. As a professional, I started in a nonprofit realm, and I was working with a lot of people in poverty, and that, again, framed my point of view on why people make decisions, how they make decisions, and the assumptions that we might have about someone. When I left there, I went to work for the for-profit industry in the oil and gas industry, and something that fascinated me was the suffering that you go through. If anyone has been in upstream oil and gas, you know this, it is so cyclical. You're either moving so fast you can't keep up, or it's crashing so hard, your friends are being laid off. You suffer. You survive and you suffer. And when you build that, you build this camaraderie and this network and this sense of belonging that's really meaningful. So all those things really did frame, my existence and how I show up at work.
Can I pause right there because a couple of things I wanna explore. So, working with people in poverty,
Mm.
what were your observations, takeaways that if you sorta had that magic wand that you could just sorta take from your head and put it in theirs that would help them in any whatever help means to you, what would you say to that?
I saw this great and to frame it up, we grew up very we I never worried about food on our table, but I never had a new pair of shoes. Like,
Okay.
that's how I grew up. So, we grew up my dad was a teacher, my mom was a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids. So, I experienced the, want. I never experienced the desperation of, "I don't know where my next meal is coming from." Okay, so when people say, "Well, I grew up poor," my question is, did you have to worry about with whether you were going to eat that day and how you're going to eat?
Yeah, if you didn't have to worry, you're not really poor.
Right, if you didn't have to worry, I appreciate the hardship and the want that was there. It's a different level of insecurity not know if where food is coming
Right.
from.
Now we're talking about existential.
This is something that frames your and it is decades. So, I think of a couple of things that I would put through is someone who's coming from that, you first of all, you don't understand it, and don't assume that everyone's experience well, there's lots of opportunity out there. Don't assume your experience and the way that you have experienced life is the same way someone else has, and there are ways that we judge. So there might be opportunity, but I would never see it,
Okay.
kind of things. So be empathetic to people's journey on how they got there. I think I'm trying to remember if it was a TED Talk. If I can find it, I'll share it with you. But there was a researcher who actually studied sugarcane farmers, and they receive almost all of their revenue at one point in time when they sell their crop. So they measured the IQ of these farmers right after they'd sold the crop and they had plenty of money, and the IQ of them right before they were able to harvest the crop.
Okay. Interesting.
It was a substantial drop. I think 12 points, something
Wow.
like it was very substantial. It was several points.
It's funny you mentioned sugarcane because that is a particularly difficult crop to deal with. It's dangerous to at least it used to be. I don't know what it is now, but
I'd have to find the research. I could be misquoting it, so don't take. But it's this drop to the point where he's like, your lack of resource affects your IQ because you're spending your time, energy, and mind space in trying to figure out how to survive.
Mm,
I think that so if I could pass anything out to anyone is just don't make that assumption. Be careful of the assumption that you're making
okay.
about someone that is living in poverty and their capacity
Okay.
because they're just trying to survive. And that's you if you haven't ever lived trying to figure out where your next meal is come from, and I haven't, you can't truly understand what that space is.
So they're it's almost like they've got kind of a veil that's imposed by just protecting the core in a way that,
Yeah. It's I know people who have adopted children, right? And they would hoard food. So there's behaviors you'll see, food hoarding being one of them. There's a great author, a comedian, Zarna Garg. I would totally recommend her book. She is an immigrant from India, and she has just, I mean, first of all, she's flippin' hilarious.
eh,
But she lived on the streets of Mumbai as a child, like 14, 15, for a couple of years. And she reflected on when she came into success, when she had money, same behaviors were still there. The same behaviors were still there because that had been so ingrained in her. And even her family didn't understand because they didn't understand the suffering that she was going through. She kind of hid what was happening. So they didn't understand it. So to them, it didn't happen. And if you don't understand that, why are you doing this? Why are you hoarding that? Why are you behaving that way? Like it's the family member who takes the sugar packets home, Or on the opposite, my grandfather, I swear to God, my grandfather, and he passed away when I was young. I was like 7 years old when he passed away. He would put sugar on our Fruit Loops. Like, because he lived through the Depression and sugar was not a thing. So by God, his grandchildren were gonna have as much as they could possibly shove into their little bellies.
yeah, the depression really shaped a generation, and we're still seeing the effects of it, to this day.
We are, but we're also seeing this is also something I'm trying to understand, and I encourage other people to understand, is what COVID did to young people.
That's another good point.
Ugh, because their social interactions, I think we see why is it we have so much anxiety? Well, because people had to spend a year and a half not figuring out this was formative years where you learn how to interact with people. And I know my kids are affected by it. They missed out. They missed out on building those networks and those people skills. A year and a half of building their people skills. And when you're like, well, I'm in my 40s, so a year and a half missed is nothing. It's a small fraction. Well, if you're 10, that's
Right.
10% of your life. Almost 20% of your life was spent without building social networks properly.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, absolutely. I wanna return to another thing because when you went to the oil and gas business experience, you said it was sort of roller coastery.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so I'm wondering what psychologically you observed in fellows in that business because of that roller coastery
Phew.
What takeaways do you see from those kind of conditions?
Yeah, I think it's similar. Any kind of suffering in a group creates camaraderie. This is why the military puts you through boot camp,
Yeah.
right? So you suffer together, and I'm still good friends with people that I worked with. I can still call, reach out, and if people know that you came from there, like, oh, you get it. So it's an understanding, it's like a mutual understanding that we have of each other, of what you go through. And there are lots of industries that are cyclical in nature, but the upstream oil and gas industry, I would say, is so dramatic. And I think that was like, I have, I learned also at that time, don't take things personally. During that time, there was a downturn and I had to lay off a friend of mine that was on my team. And she still ended up being one of the backups for when my kid was born. Like, she was one of the backups to pick my son up from daycare if necessary. So, those things weren't personal, right? There's just the industry, it's just how it goes. And you kind of Kevin Hart, I'm listening to his book, and he talks about shrugging it off and the ability that he developed to shrug it off, and I think you develop that in the upstream oil and gas, you shrug it off. "Alright, this is how it is, let's go on." You don't stop. You can't stop and say, "Oh, poor me, yes, poor you, you got laid off. Mourn for a day. Let's go.
This dynamic is one of the more interesting going back to Landman. I happened to be over at my parents last night. We watched Landman together,
Oh,
so they
fun.
haven't seen it, but my mom, we watched it together, again last night, for the first episode of the
Yeah.
second season, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it and you're gonna see it, stop right now, skip a minute or 2,
Skip.
but, they were in the boom thing where the
Mhm.
son had put everything on the line to try to make it, and, that it kinda opens up where they actually did hit, and he was trying to tell his wife what that meant for them, and it's like the numbers were just staggering,
Mhm.
and so it's like you get the
It
dream.
is.
Now it's a TV show, so the dream is not gonna stay the dream, right? There's gonna be all these things that come in. They're gonna the roller coaster's gonna go back down the hill too, just because 'cause you're, an instant millionaire, and it really wasn't instant, but, just because you hit it big there doesn't mean you stay that way. So anyway, let's riff off of that and kinda go into, from there on to where you are now, Esther.
Yes. So I worked in the oil and gas, and then I moved into manufacturing. I was still in upstream oil and gas, and was in a worked for a manufacturing company, and spent my career in the go to market space. So we think about how you present your organization in the marketing, sales, customer service, and then I moved eventually into product management. So I worked for a manufacturer in Houston. Really enjoyed it. Learned so much. I will say that was one of the foundational learning, like, what I learned about who I am. It was the one of the first times I managed a larger team, learned how to be a good manager. Oh, so there's so many learnings you take from that. Don't manage yourself. My dad would say sometimes, I remember him telling me that somebody has to be the elbow. And by that he meant, there's of all the things that it takes for organization to function, for a body to function, there's moving parts too. There's an elbow. Like, that's not exciting. No one's excited about that. You need it, but no one's excited about it. And that's completely okay for people to operate in an organization. They just want to have the same job and do that job well. I wanted to grow and learn and move. And they just not that they didn't want to grow. It's not that they didn't want to learn. They wanted to be really good at their jobs, and they wanted to do that job and no other jobs because they were good at it and it facilitated their lives. I couldn't understand that when I first started. So having that was one of the key things that I learned was, like, not everybody's going to look or think or talk or have the same objectives as you. And that's okay. Because I would come in both barrels blazing, and it really shook things up. But eventually I learned, and then they learned how to communicate with me, and I learned how to communicate with them and listen better and meet them where they needed to be met, not where I wanted them to be met. Because sometimes I'd have someone I was like, "You're amazing, and you could do all these things." And they're like, "Yeah, but I don't want to." That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. And I had to learn that. I learned how to deal with not great interactions with customers and colleagues. It was just all this learning. I had some really great mentors there that I stay in touch with to this day that helped coach me. I tell everybody I've ever worked for since then, Victor, I'll send this to you. You can listen to it. And that's just your shout out, Victor Jackson. He would say, I'd come in his office, I'd be all worked up about something. He'd just look at me like, Esther, wax on,
Ah,
wax on, wax off. And ever since then, I've told people I have a lot of intensity, and when I get into something, I'm gonna make it happen. And if it doesn't go my way or something happens and I don't like it, I might need to calm down. But I learned about that. I learned this about myself. That doesn't mean I have to not be that way. It meant that I had to recognize it and then find a place to calm down. So then I'd go to his office and be like, Victor, just need to calm down for a minute.
now, did he mean part of that, or what I was taking is that did he mean a return to fundamentals, or
It was a return to fundamentals, but just calm down. Like, think it's gonna be okay. Process, process. Don't let it get to you. Process. We're going through process. Let it take the time. Slow down and process. Because that's really what he was working at. It wasn't just the fundamentals. This is a reference to the Karate Kid. He was training him, so he's training him how to move. So you're training how to move. And as a person who's always on the go, I will try to rush through that movement, which is what is the Karate Kid trying to do? Rush through the training. Just tell me how to do the thing when he's saying, "Hey, calm down. Learn the motion. Learn the motion. Learn the motion." It doesn't mean that I didn't get worked up about it, but I had to calm down. Let's pause, reflect, and think. Pause, reflect, and think. And I learned that, and it created this capacity for me to calm down. So when I would get worked up about something, I'll ne this is so funny, he's bringing back memories. I'll never forget going in his office, and he'd eat these little oranges. He'd have these little mandarin oranges. I'd sit down, and I'd be, "I am really this thing happened. This person's driving me crazy. This situation's" and he'd just smile. He'd just wait. And he just open his orange, and he's like, "Dad, you wanna talk about it?" "Alright, yes, I do, but I wanna talk about it calmly." And then we'd process. So it was a lot of processing, like, it was getting you to that technique of processing when something's really worked up, when you don't like something's going through. So that empowered me over time when things don't go like, yeah, I might have my venting session, but I'm not gonna have my venting session in the moment. That will pause, calm. Alright, let's just calm, let's walk through. Talk to me about what's going on. And there's been situations where people have been extremely unprofessional in a sitting. I diffused it. It was directed at me. I was able to diffuse it to the point where other people in that meeting were like, "I wanted to say something to defend you, but you were calming it down, and I know I would have made it worse." I think having that expertise, that's really one of the huge having those mentors is something that I learned so much about. Um,
that to me is high EQ, right? High emotional intelligence, where you're able to recognize in the moment and adjust in the moment. That's a superpower, and the nice thing about that is you can develop it. So that's a great example of how you're able to develop. You know, sometimes there's things that we are given, and what we're given is that's it. But in this dimension, we can really pay attention and
mhm,
actually make some pretty good um, progress, so that it makes a difference. That's a great example where okay, there's an upsetting thing, or somebody does something that is objectively objectionable, and then do we spiral, or do we just sort of stay put and let it go? And that's what Don Miguel Ruiz in Four Agreements calls imperturbability, right? Anybody can do anything, and it doesn't throw you off center.
yeah, I think a lot of folks too want to there's this idea that I have to control the situation, and you don't have to control you can't control it, so I can only control how I respond to it.
Yeah.
So, I've told my kids and I've told other people, I think it's being anchored, and by that I mean grounded, and by that I mean, do you know where you stand? Forget where everybody else is, do you know where you are? Do you know who you are? Can you when I think about it visually, can I do I feel my feet on the grass? Do I feel my feet in the earth supporting me? Grounded, I am here. I am here. The wind and the world may whip around me, but I am here and I am okay with who I am. So I stand as me and just who I am. This was something that took me time. So continuing on actually to my professional journey, I worked in Houston.
Actually, one question before we leave, because you were specifically around your kids, you gave kind of what it looks like to me as step one, which is that grounding, starting with feet on the ground, feet, bare
Mhm.
feet in grass, all kinds of methodologies that people point to here. it starts there but doesn't end there. So my question that I want to explore is, how do you guide your kids to continue along that path to know better who they are?
Yeah, it is I think, in a way, is it step 1? Or is it the ending where you know? Because to get to that point is really hard, and I
So
think
it's cyclical you're pointing to maybe.
yeah, it's a cyclical journey where, you're constantly figuring out who you are, right? There's new things you learn about yourself. Okay, how long have you been married to your spouse? How big you been
Me
with your
me personally, 29.
28 years. Have you learned new things about her in the last year? Probably.
Yeah,
Something that she liked, something that she didn't like. The way that you said a thing that she's like, "Oh, I
although
really
I
like
got
that shirt."
yes, with an asterisk because, one of the things about my wife that's special is, she's kind of like a rock. I'm the one that's sort of the balloon, and she's the one making sure I don't get taken off into the wind and the storm. So, she's less sort of, I wanna say, changeable, and I'm more like we have that kind of dynamic, so
Yeah.
does affect the dynamic you're pointing to a little
It
bit.
it does, but in any case, you're still learning. Like, you don't
Yeah,
know all the things about your wife.
exactly correct.
You can't.
Well,
We're too
things change. I mean,
complex,
things change.
and
They
things
always
change. So, in that same if you can't like, if you have known someone for that long, it's the same for yourself. Do you know yourself? Even though you think you know yourself last year, do you know yourself this year? So with my kids, it's a sense of peace, I guess. When I think about standing and being okay, being grounded, it is the peace at which you exist. Therefore, you are able to exist and impact others and go through life in a place where you know who you are. So the idea is, do I know who I am so that I can exist around others? And it's the challenge, I think, and I don't have the answer to this, because I think it's so individual, is how do you get there? So for my children who imagine that they have personality, who have these great personalities, yet might struggle in social interactions, how do you help them? And I think for each person, you have to figure that out, but being knowledgeable about what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, all bring you to the point where you're confident in you. And not necessarily, and by confident, I think sometimes mistake the sense of ego that is I'm better. It's a comparison versus it is. There is no good or bad to it. It's just is.
well, you started there. It's that grounding and acceptance, and therefore you don't own the crap,
Yeah.
what other people are throwing at you. It's like, "Oh, that's interesting. That's some
Yeah.
interesting crap you got over there."
Well, yeah, I will come back to Kevin Hart has this, and he goes through it in his book, I think this is one of his I couldn't make this up, and he calls it a shrug. He shrugged, and I might verbalize it differently, but it's that same, "Be a duck," right? Be a duck. Good old Ted Lasso, be a goldfish, Ted Lasso, be a duck, be a goldfish. I've said, "Be a duck, let it roll off your back. Be a duck. You're a duck. You're swimming on the water, be a duck."
Good, thank you for that. I think that's a nice little condensation because that's basic, and when we wanna know what's real and true and what you actually care about, look at what your attitude is what you want for your kids, right? That's
Yes.
that's the lens. That's great. So, okay, so now let's go to where you were gonna go there for the next step on the professional,
Yeah. So on my professional journey, I lived in Houston and then I moved to Pennsylvania, Central PA, transferred with the company that I was with, and worked in product management for a couple of years before I made a couple of other transitions. But in that time, I learned things about myself. I learned because at this point in your career, I've managed people. Now I'm managing large product lines. I'm moving industries. I'm moving to understand technical knowledge. So I'm understanding that I can take really technical concepts and articulate them in a way that makes sense and tell the story around it. So I learned those things, but I also learned about what I'm willing to compromise and not willing to compromise. I am not the traditional executive. I am not that traditional person that is going to network up or, manage up. I'm going to come genuinely and authentically as who I am. And I came to the place in my career where I had to be okay with that, regardless of what that next step was. And so when the next opportunity, specifically at the software company I worked at, came, I wanted to be authentic. And when I interviewed, I'll never forget. And now if I ever have talked to anyone about a job or anything like that, it's always this is who I am. This is authentically me. I leaned into my authenticity so much in here because there were some real challenges that I was facing with working personalities or people that I didn't care to work with or things that I didn't trust people, which was not a great place to be. But this is authentically me, and I'm not willing to compromise my authenticity.
Can I ask a question about that? Because I think for
Mhm.
specifically for women with, let's call them, I call it pronounced personalities. My daughter has a pronounced personality. Um,
Such a nice way to say that.
yeah, you have a pronounced personality, I'd say. And I think pronounced personalities in like your dad's, for instance, he gets a different reaction, different kind of thing than say you do. And so I'm curious about your experience and view from what you had to learn to navigate because of that.
Yeah, some of it depends culturally too. So
Okay.
depending on where you
It's
are,
context related.
it is very context related. So being in central Pennsylvania, I would say more conservatively minded. It's not going to try to move as fast. We're maybe not going to take as much risk. We don't want to deal with the conflict. We want to there is a methodology to deal with conflict in a very specific way that maybe is not my preferred way of conflict
Yeah, it's
resolution.
a Pennsylvania Dutch kind of a thing that sorta doesn't
Live and let live.
like we were very enamored of the known and distrustful of the unknown.
Yes, that's a great way to say that. Whereas I came from Houston, which is like, I mean, it's like a wildcat well. Like you have no idea what's out there. It's a wild, like it's running into a wildcat. Like you don't know. We got to figure this out. Go, just go. So I learned about myself, what I do, what works well and what doesn't work as well. And one of the things and I continue to learn is that I do want to go. And so if I'm put into positions where, or I'm in a position where people don't want to move, change, grow, do I have as much value to offer there? I mean, I'm happy to be present. I'm happy to be supportive, but I'm looking for opportunities that are building momentum, that are building transition, that are looking to move. I am here now and I want to be there. What do we need to do to make that happen? That's something I learned about myself. Not everybody wants to be in that state. Sometimes people want to be in the contemplative. They want to be reflective. They want to be able to help organizations sit in a place or a person sit in a place and reflect of what's around them. And that's a great role to play. It's not downplaying one's better or worse, but as opposed to what I enjoy, what I think is important for me. Does that make sense?
I love this because, like, one of the ways that we've learned with the Mentor Machine protocol is to start with the unique set of strengths that the person has and work through those. We add all the prompts are through that lens of their strengths. So you're not trying to make the zebra a lion and a lion a zebra. That's a waste of energy and it doesn't end well,
Yes.
right? But you want to be the most zebra-y zebra you can be, or the
Yeah.
most lion-y lion you can be, sort of thing.
Right. Right. Well, and I saw speaking of zebras, I just saw this, post somewhere where they at one point tried to tame zebras and, like,
Right.
treat them like horses. Isn't gonna work. They're not a
It
horse.
looks like it should.
Yeah, nope. We're gonna nope right out of that.
They are not even close to alike.
No. So yeah, I agree. I think it's important though to know yourself, and that takes a journey. I think sometimes and especially young people, they have an idea of who they are, but they maybe haven't had the experience to live that who you think you are. Live it out for a while and see if it's true. And I think
Yeah.
we
You know,
don't always have that. We're not always giving people that opportunity or really giving ourselves the opportunity to like just live it out for a while. See what you think.
you just inspired a thought for me, Esther. So, zebras have stripes, and the stripe pattern is unique to each zebra. So, to a human eye, the zebras pretty much look the same.
Yeah.
To the zebra eye, every zebra looks very different from each other. Horses don't have those stripes. Now they have different colors and sizes and all the rest of it, but I wonder the degree to which there's the individual differentiation is a product or a consequence or vice versa of those different sort of, for lack of a better word, personalities or psychological makeups. Because horses
Mhm.
want to belong. Horses want to find where they are, and they're
Right.
much in it. And I don't know if it works the same way for zebras or not, but they're not tameable, and they're not they don't really wanna belong to you. So they have that very differential, and I'm wondering the connection between the fact that they're individually differentiated. Is there any sort of
Yeah.
that's kind of a stray thought, but I just
It's a
wonder.
straight thought. Yeah. I think, there's some you could probably find some research. I've read a little bit about it. I don't know how, well-founded it is on people's personalities defining how like, the way you look actually has an influence on, your personality. I will say to a certain extent it does. I think the more attractive you are, you have experiences in the world, and you assume that everyone's experience is like you, and again, it's not. People may not remember you, or people may not treat you the same way, and that just matters. So I think to the point of, like, every zebra is different and every mark is different, and we don't assume just because don't assume that because like you said, we see the zebra and we think, "Oh, it's a zebra." Don't assume that everyone else thinks like you. Don't assume that everything else exists and has present and has processed and has learned. Don't assume that. If I can have somebody take that away, because that's the foundational principle of curiosity, because now I can ask the question. So how do you show up? Tell me about that. Now I'm genuinely curious to know, how do you show up and how did you get to this place that you show up?
Well, I'm guessing, you tell me, I'm guessing that the fact that you were able to find an authentic leadership style nurtured that mindset in your team.
Yes. I love leading teams. I stay in good touch. We still we still have, for the last team, my last company, we still have or we're getting together for Christmas. We still have our little chat group to do our Wordle every day.
Oh, my wife and I do Wordle too, that's fun.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I do it with my sister
Little wake up of your mind. Anyway, go ahead.
so you build, I think it
Dordle?
is.
You do Dordle?
I don't. I've done Quordle.
I don't know what's Quordle.
Quordle is 4
4,
Wordles
okay,
together,
okay.
and then yeah,
I gotta try that.
you've gotta
I've only
try that one.
only done Wordle and Dordle. Anyway, keep going.
I think it allows people to build psychological trust and safety in the team. The more confident you can be and authentic you can be, a lot of young leaders think, I have to have all the answers. Nope. In fact, I would loved asking my team what they thought we should do. And I'll tell you this story. This is one of the I knew I was doing it right when this happened. So this is early in my career. I was in Houston and I had a team. We had to build a lot of processes. There weren't a lot of great processes when I took over the department. So we built all these processes out. And I was really trying to empower the team because we were processing lots of orders, thousands of orders and quotes, and it was a technical review process. And we'd have variations come in, something that was completely different than what it had, something else, and they wanted some kind of exception to the thing. And I remember one of the ladies on my team came in and said, "Okay, so we had this order come in. This is what they stated. This is the way we want it." I looked at our process with this other person, like another teammate. We went through it, and this is how we think we should handle it. And I was like, "I think that's great. Make sure you document A and Z." So I had a little bit to contribute, but I knew I had done something right because they were empowered to come up with the solution. They had systems in place by which to reflect on and build. So what they built aligned with the process with a few tweaks that they had to make. And they collaborated with each other and then came to me with the solution. I just felt
Every
like I won the lottery.
every leader's dream. That's functions that way, right?
Yeah. So I didn't have the answers. And I loved being able to say, "What do you think we should do?" That's a great question for a leader to ask because you're leading people who are in the trenches every day. And the military figured this out a long time ago with the commander's intent. We are going to take the hill. And for me, it was, we've got to process these orders. We've got to make the organization money. We need to get it done as fast as we can. There's liability associated. Great. We understand that. What's the commander's intent? The intent is to get there, but we're going to empower people to figure out some of the details on how we get there. I'm not going to tell you which troops to move where and when.
Yeah, good. So as we kind of come up on time, let's kind of land the plane a little bit. I want to look towards the future. So I want to kind of see what you're excited about, what you're looking forward to, where you think your path leads, or,
Yeah.
where your curiosity and your open mindset,
Yeah. Where are we going?
what are you seeing in the, let's say, in the horizon ahead?
Mhm. All right. Well, that's a great question. So I've started my own business. Leaving my last company gave me the opportunity to kind of reflect on what I wanted. So I've started my own. It is in consulting and specifically in go to market. And what I'm excited about is helping people create actionable structures. I've set a lot of goals, and we all set these great lofty goals. but that connection between I've set this lofty goal, I have these key performance indicators. How do I tie all this together? And the day-to-day execution becomes a real challenge. So I'm working through some opportunities to help organizations create that structure to see results, right? Finding opportunities, again, to coach and to mentor. I'm starting a program for new managers to help them figure out who they are and spend some time there. And then working with organizations to get the most out of what they already have. And I think a lot we're in a place in society and culture and technology where we have probably overpurchased. We've bought more. We have more stuff than we know what to do with. We have, and we were talking a little before this about what softwares you're using or things that you're doing. And I think organizations and even as individuals, how many TV subscriptions do you really need? Well, for a company, it's the same question. Do I really need to use that CRM and that marketing platform and then that scheduling platform, and really thinking through, am I getting the most out of it? So it's not that even that I get rid of anything, but am I using everything that I could be using?
It's almost like the conundrum of the mega let's say the grocery store that has 1,400 different ketchups and mustards. So it's like, all right, I just want ketchup.
I know. Yeah, decision fatigue.
Yeah, that kind of thing? Or is it just, chasing the shiny object? Like, "Oh, this is good, this is gonna give us this," and pretty
Yeah.
soon you have this sort of inventory and it all doesn't necessarily fit together.
Yeah, or well, and I was talking to somebody the other day, they said they were doing a technology audit for a large organization, and every single business unit had their own tech stack for things. So companies are losing a lot of money there. Some of it is the decision fatigue.
Okay.
Some of it is we've just let people get what they want because we want them to do it. So we get they all these different business units and they do all those things. A lot of it is, and I can't tell you, working in professional services, how many times does it happen? The CEO or executive would say, "All right, we've got to put in a CRM." And then they do it, but nobody actually does it. There's no real adoption for it. Or it's a great idea. How many organizations have you been to or heard about where the CEO's like, "I just read this book." Oh God, you just read a book. So all right, everybody, Bob just read a book. Get ready to change everything that we're doing for our strategic intent. So I think you have a lot of leaders that are trying to build those structures, and it is a shiny object. So sometimes it's shiny, sometimes it's decision fatigue, and then sometimes it's each tool because certain tools are becoming platforms. Sometimes we don't reevaluate. So if you have, like, for example, a HubSpot is a great example. If you used them 15 years ago and that's been your marketing platform, you don't realize all the technologies they've added on or that they've lost. And I think that happens with a lot of software if you don't have somebody kind of thinking through it and helping you. So it's really saying, well, we're already paying for it. We're on a 3-year contract. Can we get more out of it? It's the question. It's always the question. It always comes back to, and that's what I think when you look at the future, I love asking great questions and I love helping people think through that business. Just like I've had opportunity to think through personally as well as professionally, I want to give that opportunity to other people and just ask really great questions. Or just kept meeting with someone today about this and saying, okay, well, let's talk about how do you want to get business? What are the channels? Inbound, outbound, referral networks. Like, what are those channels? Okay, great. Now let's talk about how you're going to execute on those and what are the actual tactics that you're going to use? Where do you want to spend your time? And yeah, having that discussion is a lot of fun. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And then in the future, I hope there's a lot of great discussions in my future.
I love that. I think that's a wonderful note to end on, unless you have something else that's sort of dangling.
No, that's great. I really
That's
appreciate it. Thank you so
oh,
much.
it's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Esther. I knew it'd be good, and you did not disappoint, so thank you.
Excellent. Awesome.
Esther, thanks so much, again for being my guest today. I enjoyed every second of it, as I knew I would, and, we're gonna obviously keep talking, so, I appreciate the things that you shared. Just a couple things to underscore for the takeaways of today's episode. Your mom had said, "You want a friend, be a friend." And that just goes to character, right? And what does that mean? That means being honestly interested and curious about, the inner workings and what is important to the other person. That you had an inspiration story, live like Lynn, your Aunt Lynn, who grabbed life by the horns, grabbed the bull by the horns and wasn't afraid to be bawdy and when she was gone, it sort of left a hole in the universe that you were inspired to fill, and I think that's a wonderful model for people to learn how to appreciate each other is, what's the hole that this person is filling? So I was moved by that particular thing. You mentioned something I thought was important is, you wanted to create the positive influence in the sphere around you. And so oftentimes when we're looking at our careers or, the world in general, we're sort of looking at the macro level. And sometimes it's at the cost of the people that are in the room. And that's where our power actually is the people that we're actually physically with or connected to through a shared mission. So I think that's really important. You mentioned something about don't manage yourself. In other words, what I took from that is be open and listen to other people and kind of be part of a team. And also had some great mentors yourself. You gave a shout out to Victor Jackson, who kind of brought the Karate Kid wisdom of return to fundamentals and calm and getting, not getting thrown off balance. This has been the Eye of Power podcast with Tom Dardick. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother, Scott Dardick, for the music and his music production. If you'd like to reach me, simply email Tom at dardickcommunications.com.